Thank you for your teachings and especially for giving them to us in English. I have two questions. You talked about SOPA, about patience.
Yes.
And the way you explained it in my mind, I just always had the word acceptance. Did I understand that correctly, that one could actually also say SOPA is acceptance? And if so, why don't we use the term acceptance, but why is it always translated as patience?
So that's the question.
That's question one, yes.
Okay, and the second one? The second one?
The second one is that you said the external world is only arising from our own projection, and that it's important to keep this in mind. And as a Dharma practitioner, and especially I think if you're not a Dharma practitioner, if you are in very difficult life situations, where you experience outer circumstances that are very traumatic maybe, I find it very difficult to make this step from theory to practice, to keep this in mind always. So what advice do you maybe have for people in such a situation, for a Dharma practitioner and maybe also for doctors, psychologists, people who work with people in such situations, when it's not explicable from, say, their lifestyle, maybe they are good people in this life and they're experiencing karma from previous lives and it's very intense and it can be life-threatening or whatever. What advice do you have? It's the second question.
So then the first question was about, sorry, just to remind me a little bit.
Is patience acceptance? And
Acceptance,
if so,
yes.
why
Yeah.
do we call it patience?
Acceptance, actually I think one can be put it as that. I mean, I really don't know why it's actually labeled as patience or tolerance, yes. But let's say we use the word acceptance. Still, no matter what word we use at the end of the day, it will always have that meaning. Yeah. Because accept, again, if you meditate on that word, it's almost like as if there's an external thing to accept. So it could, again, go back to the same old thing. Yes. So we may use for particular occasions maybe certain words, maybe that will help us. But that's the thing about, most languages. Whereas in this case, for some reason, I don't know how this is possible, but for some reason, Sanskrit and Tibetan has not the upper hand, but somehow, since the very language is based on that same very practice, they are a little closer. Meaning that, for example, if you used Tibetan to translate scientific words, technological words, machinery words, it's very poor. It has very, very limited vocabulary. But when it comes to describing Buddhism, it's very efficient. Because for centuries, they've been using that language just to describe the one thing, almost. So therefore, they're a little closer, yes. But still, even then, we still have challenges. Meaning, it's the same challenge, actually. Just like how we understand patience, the Tibetans have the same problem. So therefore, that goes to show that no matter how much of a language we perfect, at the end of the day, it's the same thing. Language, we can almost relate to it as the in-between thing, the tool, right? The external world, internal world, and the language is the medium, the tool, to connect the two. It's like a bridge. So that goes to show that, first of all, the external world has no real effect on the true understanding. The medium has no real absolute effect. And if that's the case, then what is the internal sort of structure is, the person, the one who understands, one is supposed to sort of practice. So therefore, I think we can play with words and according to the situation, use various words to make it a little bit easier. But it will still need a lot of time, for sure. That's why we cannot really sort of complete a chapter through a few sessions, that's for sure. We need to meditate on it. We need to discuss, and we need to give time. Yeah. Only then we can relate to it. Yes. So then, concerning the second question, sort of, as you said, how to sort of put the theory into practice. Yes, that's the most difficult thing. I think the challenge comes from mainly you cannot really blame. Of course, we would rather say it would be really helpful if there's something or someone to blame too, actually. Yeah. Because it will make things a lot easier. But we really cannot. The closest thing we can say is our upbringing. Our upbringing, that doesn't matter whether it's East or West, it's the same thing. Yeah. And because there is no difference, maybe it'll bring us closer on this side. Because it's not a matter of our culture or mentality or how we look. There is a general style of upbringing that we all face. Probably animals don't face that. Other realms maybe don't face that, but we humans do. It's the most ironic thing. The moment you are in this format called you are born into this born as a human being, it's attached to it. That sort of that irony is you are born with that irony sort of thing. That is it good? Absolutely. Is it a bad thing or a good thing? Not really. It could go either way. Yeah. But nevertheless, we are born with it, just like shadow. Shadow is not necessarily a bad thing. Yes. If there is no shadow, then the form would look sort of out of place. It will look like as if it's been pasted on. Yes. Whereas because of the shadow, it makes the object look real to the environment, to the background. So in the same way, we are born with that irony. And that irony is none other than our sort of natural sort of, I don't know if it is natural or unnatural, but it's somehow there. We teach our children to be tough. Of course, out of love. Out of love, we teach them not to get bullied by others, not to get bullied by other children, be tougher than them, look tougher than them, look bigger than them. You see, it begins from right there. So it begins from the moment, that's why Buddhism is very interesting, because it talks about concept, you see. Concept is, in this case, the main factor. If you really have to blame something, probably that's the closest thing. That the parents begin to teach concept to the children. That, of course, you cannot teach them right away. So there is a stage, there's a period where they are not hindered by that at all. So therefore then they are able to be themselves, playful or stupid as they like. Doesn't matter. But it's most endearing. That's what we love about children, yes? Because they have no inhibitions at all. But somehow there is no real choice. That's the setting that we are living, that we have lived in for so long. So therefore, we have no choice but to begin teaching concepts, or, in other words, teaching inhibitions. To say there are the so-called thing called others, to refrain from, to protect yourself against, all that. Of course, it's all out of love. That's the most gracious area. So, now in here, I don't mean to say, sort of again advertise spirituality here, but the thing is, the practice is supposed to have the means to remedy that. So, remedy in terms of not to say that, okay, now let's reinvent our education. Not in that way. So we don't have to do anything drastic. as to reformat and reform the way we educate our children. Not at all. All we need, all it's suggesting is that at some point, or simultaneously, because the children can absorb, they are so absorbing, yes, they're always sort of hungry to mimic and imitate, that you can, by the by, teach them. Teach them, although to say you have to be tough, and you have to have patience, acceptance, but at the same time to imply, according to the children's maturation, that, to imply that it's all a joke, sort of thing, according to children's understanding, that you have to imply that, one, and most importantly, the way you live, of course. The way, meaning, if you are the biological parent, or if you are the non-biological parent, or if you are, meaning, for example, for orphans, one could say, for all the others, or step-parents or whatever. That's, of course, another huge factor is the way they live, the way they abide their life. So meaning that if they seem to abide by the very thing that they preach, that they go through all the formalities of being shrewd, being tough, being wise enough to sort of go through the sort of the loopholes and know the shortcuts in life, yet at the same time they are aware, they are vigilant, they have the introspection that it's all just a temporary measure. It's not absolute, so therefore they're not completely consumed by it. Then that's another teaching, I think, that the parents can provide to the children without having to actually teach it as a class, because they are smart enough to absorb that from a distance. Yeah. So it's really difficult to say how to really meet the two together, the theory and practice. It's really difficult, because you see, the moment we feel that there is a thing called theory and that there is a separate thing called practice, right there and then we have almost, if not engraved, we are preparing to engrave that there is a separation. And then there is no hope. We will try to then glue it, we will try to bring it closer, but it will never stick. So, therefore, the idea of emptiness is so important, because the only way to practice this emptiness, this insignificant thing, is to know that all of these are just temporary, all of these are just ever-changing things, and so therefore you really have no glued, sort of tied down care called attachment, So you're carefree. You're not careless, but you're carefree. So much so that you can be as generous as the theory says, on your own, without someone having to teach you. That it just happens, out of nowhere. All this time you've been taught and told that you cannot be generous because someone is will not understand, someone will not accept, someone will not appreciate. But all of a sudden something comes in you, sort of as if you are being possessed, sort of thing. I don't mean to go that far, but sort of just to explain that you feel right in every way that you can give, and there is no real logic behind it, sort of thing. That takes place at some certain point after having much, practice. Yeah. Then this differentiation or separation of practice and theory just disappears on its own, and you don't feel any separation at all. You almost feel that there is, those two things were just made up. But when we initiate into this path, we have no other way but to comply that differentiation that we all have. That there is a thing called theory, and theory is like this so that it's easier to digest. Because if you say that this is the practice, it's too heavy on us, yes? So if you say it's a theory, you can relax and you can sort of take it a little bit lightly, and then sort of wrap your mind around it, you feel comfortable, and then all of a sudden the teacher says, actually, you really don't need to bother yourself with that at all. As long as you understand the theory, that's it, And but if you're really sort of concerned about the practice, of course, the teacher says that I can give you something. But it's just all temporary measures.